following is a conversation with Orlaith White. Orla is the health and performance coach for Shamrock Rovers women's team. Orla balances her role with Shamrock Rovers with full-time work for Unit 3 Health and Fitness. We hope you enjoy the podcast. You with us daily or what's the crack?
I'm here. Orlaith White, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you. I'm very good. Very happy to be here. How are you keeping?
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
That was
Positive
very
vibes.
powerful. Yeah.
Positive
Thanks,
vibes
guys.
for Morgan always.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Hey guys.
Yeah, look, we'll go straight into it. So something we do with our guests, if you've seen the recent ones, is we get a kind of quote or a description of the person from someone who has worked with you previously or currently. So I'm going to read this out to you. So
Anonymous.
Orla has a very unique style of coaching. It is a very person-centered style where she genuinely cares about the human first and the athlete second. She focuses on looking after their health and getting them into a good place mentally, and from there performance can flow. Orla embodies the term high performance and strives to bring this culture everywhere she goes. The biggest compliment that I can give to Orla is to say that if I was to have kids in the future, I would love Orla to be their coach and role model, as if they have someone like her looking out for them and for them to look up to, they will do great in life. So,
Jeez, that's very nice.
how does that make you feel? Is it
Very warm. Yeah, who said that?
Oh, I'll tell you.
Anonymous. No.
It's anonymous.
No?
It's fully anonymous.
Yeah.
Okay, really?
And you'll never find out who it is.
That's
Really?
gonna wreck
I'll
her head,
find
isn't
out,
it? That's
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
annoy you.
So you can try to figure it out if you
Yeah.
want, but
Yeah.
you won't be
That's
hearing
very
anything
nice.
from us.
Yeah, I think it's lovely to hear that from whoever it is, because it's kind of what I try to do, I suppose. Like, it is very human based. I think performance coaching as a whole is more about the person and less about the athlete. I think as a byproduct, you get the development of the athlete, and as the player, they do perform better, but ultimately you need to know the person as the person and get to know them as a human before you can get to know anything else. And instead of looking at a team of kind of just a team of equal people, everyone's very individual, and how everyone needs to be treated and communicated to and just taught is very, very different. So that's lovely. Very nice to hear.
Has that always been your style of coaching, or was it something that you learned a couple of years into being a coach?
Yeah, I think it probably has always just naturally been. I never kind of just sat down and do you ever just kind of fall into something when you're like reflecting on the last couple of years? But I think it's always come naturally to me to try to get to know the people. Like, I love people, and I love listening, and I love communicating, and really getting to know just people in general and human behaviour and what motivates certain people, what demotivates certain people, how you can get the best out of someone, how you can empower someone, how you can get their performance regular, consistent on the pitch, and how you can try and educate them to just be empowered to make their own decisions and to live a healthier and happier life. And sometimes with performance, my role is health and performance, and they completely contradict each other all the time, like, because performance a lot of the time isn't very health orientated, but for 90% of the athletes' days, they should be really focused on their health and their longevity. And then the 10% of game day performance, the decisions they need to make around that is generally centered around that. So it's a fine balance between trying to educate, trying to get them to look after themselves through nutrition, through sleep, through recovery, through mindset, through self-talk, through body language. And then that in turn then generally leads to good performances.
Mm-hmm. From what you were asking there, like, do you think it came naturally when we had first met? I don't know if you remember when you'd worked or when you first came into work with us. You were playing for Athlone, and we were in Straffan. That's how long ago it was.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how long ago it was. I remember you were wearing light grey and blue Tiempos. Remember that, studs?
Oh.
Yeah.
Remember that at the time.
Always
But
good.
the conversation we had, because it was the first time you'd came in, so we didn't know much about you, obviously, and we were just having a conversation after. I was like, very unique person. As in, you were very open, great communicator, so like open to learning. And obviously at that time, we were still quite small, but you were actively looking for something to get better, which is obviously a good sign of anyone, we think. But when you're going back to your coaching style, it's exactly how you came across the first time I met you. So I think it's probably the most natural thing in the world that you go with the person first orientation, as opposed to performance, then worry about the person after. But you said there was interesting. It's like 90% of your life should be centered around health, and then 10% is performance. do you find that difficult to communicate to athletes who are just like, I've got to be lethal at the weekend, I've got to play well, I've got to do this, or is it easier said than done?
Yeah, I think that phrase, so I've got to do this, I've got to do that, like it's, athletes are obsessed, and that, especially when you're looking at the highest level of football in the country or whatever sport you're playing, they want to be the best all the time, and they're perfectionists a lot of the time. So sometimes looking at your flaws or looking at things you need to work on is quite difficult for them. And I think in order to control the outcome of something, you have to know that you can't control it. So to try and go, I need to do this, I need to have a 10 out of 10 performance, I need to score X amount of goals, I can't have a bad pass, I can't do this, is trying to reframe their mindset into more of an open and more of a growth mindset. So we all have the ideal version of ourselves, and ideally we want to act a certain way and look a certain way and behave a certain way and perform a certain way. But then we have the real version of ourselves, which is what everyone has. And I think when you have a really big disconnect between your ideal self and your real self, you get lost. And your performances go all over the place. And then when you're not maybe performing very well, or naturally you make a mistake at the highest level, and even if it's a bad mistake or it leads to a goal or leads to a loss, it can be absolutely devastating to try and come back from. So I think trying to teach the tools is difficult, but I think explaining to them that, look, this is going to help you perform ultimately, like, and the less you try to control performance and just look at the controllables. Like, I think one of the first things I do at athletes or teams is get them to tell me how they build their energy. So how do you get energy? So from food, from sleep, from being around good people, being in good environments. And then I get them to write a list of controllables and the things that they can't control. So your controllables are my energy, my attitude, preparing my gear the night before, my nutrition, going to sleep on time. The uncontrollables are performance. You can't control your full performance, because you're, especially in a team sport, you can't control the outcome of a game at all. You can't control the ref, you can't control the weather. There's so many uncontrollables. But if you put all of your energy that you're after working so hard to gain into things that are uncontrollable, you're not going to have any impact on the game at all. Whereas if you just, the goal is actually, I say this often, and it's from coach John Wooden, a legendary basketball coach, and he often spoke about winning, and he was like, winning isn't the point, wanting to win is the point. So trying to get the shift in a mindset of, look, just look after your controllables and you have a higher probability of succeeding.
Makes total sense. Do you find it hard to get, obviously the personality wise, especially in football, there's, you name it, you've dealt with X amount of athletes, not just footballers, but athletes in general. They're hard to get on side, especially when they're trying to look after their performance. Do you find it hard to communicate with them, and do you find yourself almost like actively reminding them about these things? Obviously, if you use that as your start point, that's a really good place to start, is having them write out what you can control, what you can't, because then everyone's on the same playing field per se, everyone understands that basis. And then do you find yourself like that becoming a reminder for them that right, you can control this, you're annoyed about this, but you can't control it? Do you think you're in the middle where you have to just keep reminding them what the goal is? Yeah, 100%.
Because when you're in the heat of it, like, how easy is it to have good positive self-talk when we're sitting here right now? It's so easy, isn't it? Whereas put yourself into a match, you're in the middle of Tallaght Stadium and there's X amount of people there and you're after making a mistake and people are screaming at you. It's very hard. Like, but the more you become aware of it and the more you have to click your fingers and go, right, come on, let's get back into my flow here. Let's speak positively to myself, acknowledge a mistake, but let's stay present and let's push on from here. It takes a lot of practice, but you do generally, that's me screaming at them going, get back into, come on, get back in here. Have a look at your body language, have a look at your self-talk. What's actually going on? What can you control? Let's get the next touch. Like, and it's something that, especially in Rovers, we've only started this year, like, but we've added little bits of it, and we've done a little bit of brain training, a little bit of mindset work in a team environment, but it's something I really want to get into doing on a one-to-one basis, because learning, again, is someone learns very differently to others, and sometimes in a team setting, when you're, say, doing a PowerPoint, for example, maybe 10 people in the room will be able to take up what you're trying to educate them on, but there'll be a few that just don't learn in that environment. So I think we've spent the year just collecting data, I suppose, and from so many different elements of performance and of the environment we're trying to create. And it's going to take a bit of time, but I think the next layer essentially is to try and individually work with the athletes on trying to get the best version of them onto the pitch.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of. Obviously, we had James Claffey, the Pride Psychology, and he's excellent. And he obviously touches on a lot of the psychological and the mental side of football, which is more so the sports psychology side, which is interesting. But from a team perspective, I don't think I've heard of much of that being done, especially in Ireland anyway. That idea of gathering data for a year per se, gathering data and looking at each individual and trying to go, right, what makes them tick, and then how to essentially communicate with them best. So it's tough, I would imagine, though, to get through to everyone. Because do you find anyone, maybe not in Rovers, just in general with athletes, that many are resistant to it?
I think it was so interesting in Shamrock Rovers because when we obviously just established this year, so we essentially took X amount of players from different teams, so different players came from different environments. Yeah. And some players that have just naturally grown up in certain environments were very resistant to it. And it's not wrong, it's not negative, it's just a different way of thinking and it's a different culture. So it was really interesting getting different players in and seeing where they came from. And of course they were going to be resistant to a new environment, and there's protector parts in all of us that go, I don't like this isn't how we do things. So but I think the girls, talking about Rovers in general, the players have all been excellent, and we have some great senior players within the team that are great role models for the younger players that are coming through. And definitely there's so much learning, even on my behalf. I think reflecting on the year, there's certain things I definitely would have done differently or would have done better and will do better coming into the next season. But I think in general the players have been quite open to everything we've tried to do. Collie O'Neill is absolutely excellent as well. He's our manager, and Kieran Ryan, they're a great balance. They're chalk and cheese in some ways, but they're a really good balance with the team. And Collie especially gives me the freedom to do what I need to do in my role as well, which I think is so important, especially when you're dealing with players on a one-to-one basis and you're really trying to think outside the box and do things a little bit differently. He's been so open to it and genuinely cares about the players as people too. So we share that principle, and I think that allows us to allow the players a little bit of slack if they're entering into new cultures, new environments, and there's a complete open line of communication between anyone within the team setting, whether you're a younger player, a senior player, whether you're part of the kit staff, whether you're whatever. There's a huge openness around it. So it's been quite positive, and the players have been quite responsive.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. I'm going to kind of take us back a little bit, so to your younger years, because in the first couple of minutes of this podcast, you come across somebody very well spoken, emotionally intelligent. You, I think, understand your mission as a coach, so to speak. You've got that kind of person first mentality. Is there anything in your childhood that we would need to know to understand where that kind of came from? Where maybe did the love of coaching sports come from?
It's a great question, because I think when you're your adult self, the best way to understand someone is to look at their childhood, I suppose. And for me, I had an incredible childhood for the most part. I have a great family. I'm really close with my mum and dad and my brother Evan, who you know quite well, who's a footballer as well. And yeah, didn't do too much out of the ordinary, just played a lot of sports. I did athletics, did like dancing, did acting, loads of different things. And there wasn't a football team near me at the time, so I just played Gaelic football up until I was about 16 or 17. Then joined my first football club when I was about 17, which is hilarious. So missed out on all kind of coaching from a young age. And I actually I didn't enjoy school that much, I suppose. So had a couple of friends, but kind of liked to keep them to myself. In school, I just struggled in the environment, and that might be why I'm so cautious of figuring out how people learn and the best way to coach them and to deliver information to them. Just school wasn't for me. Didn't learn very well in that environment. I'm 28 now, so going back probably 12 years, it wasn't the most open environment school, I suppose. I wasn't out at the time, my sexuality. So I think I was very comfortable with myself, with my family. We're great and everything, but I think it was something that was definitely there in the back of my mind, and I was just a bit anxious, a bit uncontrolled. I couldn't fully control my environment at that time. I got quite sick as well when I was in fifth year, so I was out for most of that year, and really struggled going back into school. So just sitting in an environment where I didn't want to be was quite challenging. Didn't learn too much, just tried to kind of get through it. And I think that period of time probably shaped a lot of who I am today as a coach. And I think going through the experiences when you're that young and you have a great support network with your immediate family, but having to be environments where you're just not comfortable and you don't learn and you don't feel fully probably understood at that time has probably shaped a huge part of who I am now.
It's probably a great asset to have as a coach because, like you said, you can really relate to young players, I suppose, in your current environment. And it's interesting because when you're in an environment like that, you kind of come out of it thinking that there could have been another interest in a subject in school, but because you're in an environment that you didn't feel kind of, we'll say, comfortable in learning in, you just kind of never know what path you could have went down, like, because just because of that shows how important the environment is in that sense. That, and schools can be a bit like that. I know I'd be the same age as you, so that kind of growing up in school, like, I found it okay, to be honest, but I can see why people did struggle in it, because it's very, like you said about the power hour presentation you do for a group of 20 players, it only gets through to a couple of them maybe, whereas school was like that for 30 people with a subject that not everybody wanted to do, and some people love it and all, so it's interesting. But I'd say that kind of experience, or do you feel it has stood to you as a coach?
Oh, 100%, and I wouldn't change anything. I think it's great when you struggle at those ages. It's obviously very difficult, but it brings a huge amount of intelligence, a huge amount of, if I can do that when I'm 17, everything else is easy, like, you know. So yeah, it's been really good, and I think at the time being involved in team sports was crucial for me. I think, and even though it was only recreational, competitive, but I never played kind of at the top level at that age. I would have played for Kildare when I was younger. But just having the team environment and that outlet of expressing myself was crucially important. And my family are incredible. We had a great relationship and still do. And my brother and I are really close. And that's probably down to my parents making us be best friends. My mum had 2 rules when we were younger, and it was no ratting and no bitching. So it kind of made us be friends. And we've really similar interests and stuff. So yeah, it's interesting. But it's a great question. I think that's one for my athletes, I think, to say, tell me about your childhood, like, because if you look at what they've gone through, you're still developing. Your brain isn't fully developed until you're in your 20s. So the experiences that you go through when you're younger, the environments that you're in, people that are around you, the struggles, the opportunities, it really shows someone's personality as their adult self.
We see you now, obviously we've known you for years, but we see 28-year-old Orla, emotionally intelligent. Just obviously from the outside, we don't know what's going on in your day-to-day life, but seem to control your life, seem very, you know, you seem with it. It's probably how to describe it. You get it. That's how we'd describe it. You get it. You know what's going on. But we see that now at 28. Is there anything you've done, definitely when you said, right, tough environment in school and etc. I think a lot of people would resonate with that, which is obviously why we host a podcast, that people can talk and share their experiences. Is there anything now that you're 28 that you had done recently, maybe just when you got out of school or anywhere in between that time period, that forced you to reflect and bring maybe any emotions you might have buried to the surface?
Yeah, I think I probably am quite a reflective person anyway. It's something that I think as a coach, or just as a human, it's really important to do, to kind of see where you're at, where you've been and where you want to go. I think from a coaching perspective, having the approach of human first, athlete second, can leave you quite open, I suppose, and it can take a lot of time, and it can eat into your personal life. And probably when I was younger, I didn't have enough boundary lines essentially, and was probably going home carrying a lot of stuff and like trying to figure people's lives out, and I probably took on a bit too much when I was a younger coach, just starting out with the best intentions, but when you're going home to Jess and then going, oh, this is after happening, that's blah blah blah, and I should just be spending time with my girlfriend. That was a really big learning opportunity. I think when in 5th year when I was sick, I kept getting my lung kept collapsing basically, and it was something that was so out of my control that when I then went into environments that I couldn't control, I just freaked out, like, and I'd really struggle with anxiety and really struggle with panic attacks at that time, and still up to recently, like in certain environments like flying or somewhere that I really just have no control of, I'd struggle in a little bit. But I think having the awareness of it's just a part of you, it's just a child part of you that's afraid and it's trying to protect you. I think that having the awareness of that and going to get help for those things is so crucially important. just trying to fully accept the real you instead of the ideal version of yourself, I think has been really helpful. And more so in the last couple of years, I go to therapy now for the last maybe 18 months or 2 years or so, and it's been incredible learning, because it's just giving you more tools into your bank, and it's allowing me to become a better person. It's allowing me to become a better girlfriend, a better sister, a better daughter, a better coach, and a better version of myself that I like a bit more. So I think the experiences that you go through definitely shape you, but they don't always have to as well.
Yeah, very well put. Very well put. Do you do anything so that I think it's almost a strange thing to say, but it's great to hear that you're going, and rather than hiding from it, you're taking on the emotions. I think that's very important. Going to therapy is obviously a great step forward as well. So power to you for doing that. Is there anything else you do, even at home or personally with people? For example, I know the guys in Unit 3 are massive into doing floats, for example. I'm going to one tomorrow for the second time on the back of seeing them doing. God, that looks great. That looks very interesting. And I'm going to therapy as well. And I was speaking to my therapist. He goes, would you ever try floating? I goes, it was in my head that I was going to go do it. He's like, just go do it and sit with your emotions for a while. So I find that very beneficial anyway. But do you do anything else outside of obviously going to therapy that you think is a really good sense of reflection, but just in general, good input?
Yeah, I think we have an analogy in Unit 3 of a volcano, and we need physical releases a lot of the time, but we need some emotional releases too. And if you think of a volcano, how they stop them erupting constantly is to build little man-made vents throughout it. So we all need man-made vents in our lives as well, because we can get so stressed, and especially when you're so busy or involved in something that's quite demanding, you need to know what your vents are. So for some people, it could be a glass of wine at the weekend, it could be going to the cinema, it could be going away with your partner, or doing something that just recharges you. And I think that's so individual for everyone. So yeah, I'm big into self-care, I suppose, probably too much into self-care. I do go to floats. I find them incredible. What was your first experience like?
Unbelievable. Came out of it, honestly, I was so relaxed. It was incredible.
Really?
Like my body was just floating, literally. Yeah, it was great.
When I was playing, when I was still playing football, we had a big final coming up. I was playing the KDUL at the time, and we had an All-Ireland final against Wexford. It was in Limerick, and there was a big lead. It was about 6 weeks away. It was a big lead up into it, and I was going to floats at the time, but instead of just going into the float and trying to relax, I started visualizing in it, and I spent probably the whole float just thinking about maybe one or two things that I was trying to manifest into real life that was going to happen into the game, and trying to use your senses to really ground yourself into that pitch in UL, seeing yourself in the dressing room, putting your boots on, walking out onto the pitch, feeling what the weather was like, visualising the area. And then I saw a couple of things that I thought were going to happen in the game. And then when the game came, it was literally like I'd seen it already and felt it already. So there was a free kick that I'd visualised, and then I took the free kick and the exact same thing happened. There was a certain phase of play that I thought that we'd worked on that I thought would happen, and I visualised that, and it came out perfectly. So floats are powerful. They're a powerful tool they're great for your body as well. The magnesium in the water is incredible for your body, but if you can visualize in them, especially as an athlete, and even if you have aspirations for a business or whatever your goals are, they're very, very powerful. In a sensory tank where you have nothing but your thoughts and your body's fully relaxed. So yeah, I do floats. I go to massages. Jess and I go away every couple of months. Turn my phone off on certain days, try to just be really present when I do have that time. And when you're quite busy, it's hard, but I think if you just have an hour and just go out and just ignoring the world for an hour and just doing, whether it's watching Netflix or reading a book or I think it's important to have those times slotted in.
When you talked about that time period where you were taking too much probably home with you as a coach, would you describe that as you were in a stage where you felt like you were burning out, fatigue, or was it more just, how would you say, so would you have described that as a kind of burnout phase where you were doing probably too much with your time?
Yeah, probably. I think when you're so and using this as well, when you're so passionate about what you're doing and you really feel it's your purpose, you can take on a lot, and you can feel like there's a massive responsibility on you, especially when you're working with maybe young athletes that are going through tough times or feel like they're your responsibility essentially. So yeah, there definitely would have been a period where I was burnt out, kind of just running off air, and not then fully giving my best self to other aspects of my work or other things that are really important to me, like my relationships or my own performance at the time, because I was probably still playing around that time as well. So yeah, it definitely was a stage of burnout. I didn't thankfully get to the stage where I needed to be signed in somewhere or needed to take a couple of weeks off, but yeah, it is tough to find that balance.
Were you aware that during it that you were kind of like, right, I'm going too far here, and then was there like a moment where it kind of hit like hitting a brick wall, or was it kind of how did you kind of come out of it, so to speak?
I don't think in the moment. I think it's hard in the moment, and I think that's why regular reflection is great, because you can really see where you're at then and see what you're doing daily, and is it matching with your goals and with your ethos and your principles. But I feel like it was more of an awareness after the fact, and more of probably people around me going, here, you're doing a bit too much there, will you take a rest, like, or look at what you can control. You can't control this person's whole life, like you can only control the hour that you're with them during the week or whatever it is. So I think that it was definitely the people around me that probably pushed me in the right direction, gave me a telling off probably.
It shows the importance of environment though, again, doesn't it? And again, you're lucky, I would consider myself quite lucky as well, with family, that the immediate people that you actually can't control, you can't control your family per se, that they are who they are. If you get fortunate with them, that's great environment wise. But let's say someone who maybe doesn't have as close of a relationship with their family and doesn't have that immediate environment when it comes to friends and whatnot. Do you have any insights into like how to find your environment, find the right places? Because for some people that could just be an hour a week where you only have this environment you need. Some people are blessed that they have it pretty much all the time, everywhere they kind of go, they've associated themselves with the right people, and again, sometimes it will just fall into place, but to actively search for it, I would presume is quite difficult to do. Do you have any almost advice or insights into maybe how to surround yourself with the right people and get into the right environments that everyone talks about?
Yeah, I think environment is something that is so important, and it's the word we've used so much even in Rovers this year. It's environment, and we're trying to build a certain culture, and it's exhausting to try and keep that up with actions and be really consistent on following it up and upholding certain standards. I think environment trumps intent all the time. So if you're not trying to eat chocolate and you sit in a room with no chocolate, it's really easy to not eat chocolate. But if you're sitting in a room full of chocolate, it's a little bit harder to not eat the chocolate. So environment is really, really important. I think I've been very fortunate to kind of just fall into certain environments that have really suited me, but equally I've probably been in environments that haven't. And I think having the awareness of, obviously family is a little bit different, your family are your family, and if you aren't fortunate enough to get on with them or feel like they're the right people for you to be surrounded by 100% of the time, I think people need to realize it's okay to be that way as well. And if you're more of a positive person and feel like there's certain people in your family that are maybe more negative, it's okay to not surround yourself with them for 100% of your time. It doesn't mean your relationship with them has to be axed. But I feel just trying different things that are new as well, and putting yourself out there and not being afraid to feel a bit uncomfortable in certain environments, and whether that's joining a new team or going to try something completely different, or joining a new gym, or even in Unit 3 we're blessed with the community that we have there, similar to training 1-to-1. The community element of what we have is rare, and I think the human connection that we create and offer to people that come in is something that people really feel like they're part of something special that's there. So yeah, I think the advice for those people is to just don't be afraid to get uncomfortable and get yourself out there and throw yourself into different environments, because you don't have to have everything fully figured out. And yes, we talk about environments all the time and it's so important, but it is very hard sometimes to take that step to get uncomfortable and try out different environments and see where your tribe are, essentially.
Makes sense. Makes total sense. More so from a performance perspective now. Obviously, you've dealt with Rovers for the past year, and you're learning a lot. First time really in a full-time club like that. Well, full-time per se, that they've been really good this year, I think, considering it's the first year in the league. I've watched a couple of their games, and obviously we work with a couple of the girls as well. And the environment and the positivity around the camp seems to be good from the outside anyway. How have you found, from a performance perspective, managing that many players on an individual basis, but still trying to choreograph the team element from a performance side? Is that very difficult to do?
I think, again, going back to environment, that we're very fortunate that we have more contact time with them in comparison to maybe some other teams in the league, or what traditionally has been done in the league as well. But I think it's just about planning, and this year was literally just environment and gather data. And it wasn't like we didn't have mad aspirations to, obviously we've done quite well, probably wanted to do a bit better when we got halfway through the season, but I think the environment that we have created is a learning environment, and I feel like the contact time in terms of performance that we have with the players has really helped to elevate the performance. So again, Collie and Kieran are exceptional. Like, I don't get involved in any of the football aspect of things, but they're so good and so open and so organised and so driven and so educated and so intelligent when it comes to that side of the game. So what we're trying to do essentially is to try and be the best at each individual aspect of that, and performance has a huge amount of dots that you need to connect. So obviously the football is the most important part of that, tactically, technically, individually, getting the players up to a certain level and continuing to grow them from a tactical and technical elements. I think the performance element for me is looking at all of the other elements of performance. So again, a huge amount of that is down to education. So whether it's education on nutrition, on certain supplements that they can take, that they can't take, on hydration, providing electrolytes, providing food for them after the games, speaking to them about sleep, speaking to them about their mindset, and trying to really connect all of those dots, for me, is a huge element of performance. And again, they've been so open to doing things a little bit differently, and I'm big on mindset and big on trying to actually train their brains and get them to be calm under pressure and get them to think clearly when there's a million things going on, and trying to get composure within the team. So I think outside the box a lot of the time, and I think sometimes they're rolling their eyes going, "Oh, here she goes again," like with these mad things. But they've been very open, and there's a huge amount of trust, I think, with the staff. Staff all fully trust each other, and then the players trust the staff, and likewise. So I think from a performance point of view, there's a lot of things that you have to control. Even with international players, people coming in and out of the camps, we have some players that play down with the 19s as well, and just purely from a management point of view of their load, we use Stat Sports as well, so you guys are familiar with them too. So that's been great in terms of quantifying data, which has been excellent to try and get everyone on the same page. The new staff who've come into Ireland have been incredible as well. So when we do have players that are in camps, they send everything over, we send everything to them. So yeah, it's been great. There's a data element to it, but I love the human connection and human side to it too.
Do you do all the data stuff? So it's that sport and all in Rovers? Fun?
I do. No. I'm learning. So it's my first year of dealing with Stat Sports, and Stat Sports themselves are brilliant. They're actually so accommodating as well. And for me, who hadn't a clue at the start, I was hammering them, what's this mean? What do I do that? And but there's so much data on it, so much research done on it, and I've great people to ask. So it's something that I've had to get a bit uncomfortable in this year and try to do something that's a little bit different, but it's so important. You need the data, and you need the distance. You need to make sure everyone's online. You need to make sure there's a certain amount of high speed running, and even people who are returning from injury, it's a huge part of the game, and it's a huge part of ensuring that everyone is up to par and they're all ready and going back to performance. It is a massive element that we'd be lost without, I suppose, and we really don't take for granted. And we track all training as well, all games. We do certain runs after games as well, so it's really, really helpful.
With your role in the women's game, do you find that along the education side of things, a lot of what you're doing is like myth busting with like things like what you should do in the gym and things like nutrition? Like Paddy only done the article, was it last week, on the carbohydrates one?
Yeah. Like
do you find there's a lot of that at the moment with like educating players on it's okay to do this?
Yeah.
Don't believe everything you've kind of heard before. Do you find that's a big role?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I think even I remember me and Claire Walsh, she plays with Glasgow City, so we were quite good friends, and we were chatting a couple of years ago, and we were just like, we thought carbs were really bad for you. Like that was our education when we were growing up, and whereas carbs are just so crucially important for fueling your body, especially when you're an athlete who needs to perform. So there's a huge amount of myths that I think come from society. There is a huge amount of pressure to look a certain way, to have a certain body composition, and sometimes they don't mix well with performance. So I think a huge amount of it is having I always say to the players, look, I'm not going to just give out to you, like, because I can't. It's not helpful at all. Like, I know you want to look a certain way. I know aesthetics come into this, but we need to find a balance between your performance-based athlete, and 99% of the time, if you look after the performance and the health side of things, naturally your body will change, and naturally things will develop as well. So, but you need to have empathy for that part of the players as well, because I think if you just pawn it off, they're just going to do what they want to do anyway. Whereas if you have a good communication line with them and you go, look, I understand you, I get that, like, and there is a huge amount of societal pressure. I think in previous maybe in previous environments that they were in, there might have been a certain pressure to look a certain way, whether that be in Ireland or in international camps or whatever it was. So I think there is a bit of myth busting, but I'm so honest with them. And I'd never lie, ever. Like, you can't. You just have to be so honest with them. And if I don't know the answer to something, I'll go and find out. But I think having an open, honest communication line with them and just having that trust is so important, because they'll tell you everything then.
Mm-hmm. I thought something was really interesting. You mentioned international camps there. It could have been for Anya in the international camp, or someone had come back from an international camp anyway, and you were looking at setting their circadian rhythm after they came back. Give us a bit of insight into what that is, first of all. It's one of them things I think that's trending now, Joe, when everyone starts talking about it. It's almost like cool for a while. But give us some actual insight into it and why it's so important for these players.
Yeah, so your circadian rhythm is your 24-hour cycle for your body. So we have two chemicals that are activated essentially at different times of the day. So we have our serotonin that wakes us up in the morning, and it's triggered by brightness and light. And then we have melatonin, which is what kind of makes us sleepy at nighttime, and that's triggered by darkness. So we had Anya O'Gorman, Alana McAvoy and Abby Larkin had travelled over to the States for a camp, and they were in St. Louis and then Dallas, I think it was. And they weren't flying home until, say, Thursday night. But we had Galway away on Saturday midday, so we were cautious of their jet lag and everything. So again, it's a controllable. So we tried to control it as best we could. So we just basically tried to get them back on Irish time as quickly as possible to try and minimise the impact of jet lag. So I think their last game was on, say, the Thursday. So US time, it would have been about 9 p.m. So we couldn't obviously interfere with anything when they were in international camp. But the second the game was finished, we were like, right, go to bed at this time. So we sent them to bed, got them up a bit earlier the next day to try and get them back on Irish time. We told them to kind of eat certain foods at certain times, try and avoid sugar and caffeine at other times, but use caffeine to stay awake at other times as well. And then we fortunately they had a doctor with them as well, so the doctor could give them some melatonin before they got onto a flight. So it's probably another outside of the box moment, but I had them wearing sunglasses in the airports to try and block the serotonin and try and produce a little bit of melatonin. So again, the trust was there. They didn't go, what's she on about? Like, there was a method in the madness, and they slept probably then on the flight back home, and we're back on Irish time. And the three of them played a part in the game on Saturday, and there wasn't a huge amount of impact on them from jet lag. So again, it's just a controllable, and one part of my role that I love and I enter into a lot is just thinking outside the box and questioning the way things were always done. Like, because I think especially in women's sports, there's been such a lack of research and resources probably given to the sport itself, and it's blown up in the last year or two, which has been incredible. But I think always trying to progress and think outside the box and trying to do things a little bit differently and then reflect on it is always something that's really positive and should be leaned into a little bit more.
Yeah, there's because there's a quote from my favourite coach, Bielsa would say, like, a madman is a madman until their ideas triumph.
Yeah.
Even you see in the Arsenal what's the All or Nothings, where they were going to play in Anfield, so Arteta brought speakers out and played the "You'll Never Walk Alone" and all that, and obviously the reception to that online was, what's he doing? They lost the game anyway, so it didn't really matter. But then on the flip side, if they'd won the game, it's like,
he's genius.
He prepared them better. Like, so sometimes these things are like that, where it can get a lot of criticism if, let's say, the result doesn't go the way, whereas the result is so many more factors to it than whether that had worked or not, you know. But it's interesting like that. Everything, like, who would have thought all the stat sport and data would have been in sport? Well, football specifically 20-30 years ago. Like, it's,
you have to be so open to be criticised, and you have to be so willing to be uncomfortable, and to just, so even in Rovers, like, we know what we're trying to achieve. The people who are inside the building and within the team and within the staff, we know what we're trying to do. So the outside noise is the outside noise, and you just have to be willing to try different things. And if they don't play off, they don't play off. Doesn't matter. But internally, we know what we're trying to achieve, like most of the teams as well. So I think that's the key, really. So not be afraid to be different and to get uncomfortable and to take risks.
Is there anything else outlandish you've tried that definitely stands out? And for me, that one makes sense, the circadian rhythm, because that's just, it's pretty clear that, like, I don't think that's a stab in the dark. It's just unconventional. I don't think a lot of people would do that or go to the lengths to do that and put but that's just a person thing. Yeah, like the data and the it's all there. It's just someone want to do something with it. So to me, that's not so outlandish. It, like, saying to the girls wear sunglasses, one thing. That sounds a bit mad, but it's not really. Like, there is, like you said, method to the madness. But is there anything else you've done and you've even, like, right, this is going to be a stab in the dark?
There's a few. I suppose I really tried to think like I have a race car driver as well that I work with, James Rowe. So he's based in the States, and so much of his job is psyche, like, is his head, and he's an incredibly talented person, but he works so hard as well. So I think with him, I got goalkeepers like Claudia Keenan as well, who's been with for a couple of years, and even with the Rovers team as well, there's a method, and I think I first heard of it in Clive Woodward's book. He was a rugby manager for England, I think, at the time, and he spoke about something called teacups. So it's thinking calmly under pressure. So he just did it in a traditional way where you just shout at people when they took a kick or whatever, or threw the ball. But I've tried to progress that slightly and really try and bring brain training into that as well. So thinking calmly under pressure when you're on the pitch, it's easy when you're in training and there's no pressure, but if there's a big crowd that's screaming at you and there's a huge pressure of the world on your shoulders, it's a little bit different, similar to trying to have a positive self-talk rather than negative. So little things we would have done, like recently we had the team in Unit 3 and we hadn't done a conditioning session. So they were doing mad conditioning for, say, 90 seconds and massively fatigued, really stressed physically, and then we gave them a word search and it was like, right, do the word search for you have a minute, like. So then they were panicked, frantic, couldn't breathe, like, and trying to get them to just stay calm when you're physically exhausted, your heart rate's through the roof, like, but calm your breath, calm yourself, focus on the thing that's actually in front of you, and complete it throughout it then. So things like that. I've done similar things like card stacks and
Niall done that with us. We were there. We were doing the boxing thing, and then he had us down doing the plank, and then he started asking us multiplication questions.
Yeah.
I was smoking to you.
I can't do maths anyway. I can't do maths anyway.
The topic is important.
The topic is very important.
God.
I'm miles off it. He was asking about basic stuff. I was like, regardless if I'm fit or not or fully focused, I still won't be able to answer your question.
I remember the plank shaking, going, oh my God.
Actually, I remember that now.
But it's a great way. It's a great way to mirror the environment that you're going to have to perform in. Like, because if you think of it, the physical exhaustion is something that can be replicated. So replicate it and then put massive stress on your body, but then put stress on your mind. Like, so try to calm everything down, relax everything down into the present moment, focus your thoughts into exactly what the task is. Leave the emotional parts of you over to the side. You need the logical parts to do this. And I remember even with Claudia as well, before we would have done something similar where got her heart rate up really quick, and then I got her into a hollow hold, so a core movement. She was really fatigued, and I went through a scenario with her, and I said, okay, your team is winning 1-0, it's cup final, your centre half is after giving away a penalty, you have to save it. What are you saying to yourself? What's your self-talk like? So the first time she went, oh Jesus, I'm a bit nervous, I feel really bad for my centre half after giving this away, like maybe I can try and be the hero here, like, and try and save this and we'll win. So then we spoke about it, and I said, was that your emotional part or was that your logical parts? And she said, probably my emotional parts. I was okay, so do it again and let your logical part lead. So then she went, right, stand on the line. Who's the person taking this? Are they left-footed? Are they right-footed? What way am I going to dive? Okay, just pick my spot and go. So she probably had a higher probability of saving it with her logical parts at the forefront of her mind in comparison to her emotional parts. So I think that type of work is something that's a little bit different. I think it's bringing in probably a little bit of psychology or just awareness to your mindset, which traditionally in Ireland probably wasn't something that was at the forefront of a lot of managers' brains to prioritise. Yeah,
I think footballers themselves, especially when they're in training all the time, it can be so robotic. It's just the same things, same actions every single day. Now that you say it, I remember Niall doing that with us with the plank, because we started doing some stuff. I suppose we can do a lot more of it. I was even talking to John about it not so long ago, but like we'd have them do a specific type of keep you uppy pattern, and then you start asking them sums as they're doing it, which is like, first of all, it's a bit of crack, and the kids like doing it as well. When you're doing things like that, it's a bit of fun, but it's the same type of idea. And I was talking to John about it not so long ago, just to get his opinion on it. I was like, you're taking a penalty for doing sessions. I was like, you're messing around every time you go take penalties in a session with a goalkeeper there. I was like, if I were to put AirPods on you and just have something screaming in your ear, I was like, what would you do? He goes, I have no idea. And it's something like that. I remember saying to him, "It's like, will we try it one day?"
Yeah,
you should. Like, yeah, we might.
Honestly,
Yeah,
you should, because the
for
more you condition yourself to it, the easier it is when you're actually in that environment. Then, so it's a massive controllable that probably isn't entered into a lot of the time, and probably just due to lack of contact time with players or teams.
Yeah.
But if you are supplementing a session with yourselves or with myself in the gym or with another coach, it's something that you probably can prioritize a little bit. And I think if you were to break down, I think James spoke about this on your podcast, like how much of performance is physical and how much is mental.
Oh, he stitched us up, yeah. He threw a question. We're a minute in, he threw a question at us. Whoa.
This isn't in the script.
Yeah.
But so many people will say 50-50 or it's more mental or less physical. So how much time do you spend training physically and how much time do you spend training mentally? It's generally not an equal balance at all. So it's something that I think is just, if you prioritize it, think of the amount of gains you can get from doing that. Like, you've played football for X amount of years, you've done X amount of conditioning training, X amount of strength training. You can probably only get maybe 5-10% better. How much gains can you make on your psyche? How many gains can you make on your mindset? And that's actually probably what's going to make the difference when you're at that level and you're trying to consistently perform every week, and you're in big games at this time of the year where it's if you're going home, like if even at the, it's something that I want to do so much more of in Rovers. And I think collectively we've done so much this year, and we can be so proud of what we have achieved in the first year. But I think even on that day we lost the cup final against Shelburne at 1:00, we were still in contention for the league and the cup, and at 7 p.m. we were out of them both. And it's heartbreaking. Like it's so hard for the players to try and come back in, try and motivate themselves, and when we have a couple of games left, but there's such learning in that. And I think from a psychological point of view, it's the first time as a team we were in that position together, and to get there was incredible, and we would have bitten the hand off you at the start of the year for us, but there's so much that we can do better to prepare the players for those environments.
I think with the mental side of things, I think a lot of athletes should be actively training it, either going and seeking extra help with external coaches or just doing it by themselves. But like it's very easy to, like you said, quantify a conditioning session, a pitch session, technical session, whatever it is, because like, right, you're here from 6 to half 7 p.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Grand, everyone knows that. But to train the psyche, train the mind, it's not somewhere where there's nowhere to go and do it unless it's going to someone directly like yourself. So I was just thinking of it there. If someone were to go, right, I'm going to start training the brain, start training it, how do you start?
I think if you can go to a coach, then definitely do, because there are so many incredible coaches. There's some sports psychologists, some health coaches, some mind based coaches. If you can and you are in a position to do that, I think definitely do. But the biggest tool that you can have for yourself is just reading and just learning. If you're not comfortable reading, then listening to podcasts or taking notes and actively trying to just get better, because there is so much information out there for free. There's so much from different podcasts, different coaches. Just look at the people who are performing really well, performing consistently, are high achievers in whatever they're looking to do, whether that's through sport or through business or through whatever, and look at what they're doing. And it's one thing I do. I've loads of books at home, but it probably takes me 3 months to read one book because I'm taking so many notes in it. And I think not being afraid to get uncomfortable and reaching out to certain people as well. And there's so much information out there. And even from a pure brain training point of view, like reading is great for your brain, like, and listening to podcasts is great for your brain, and going to reach out to different people and getting uncomfortable and putting yourself out there is brilliant for yourself and for your own development. So I think definitely just looking at the resources that are there for you is a great start, and trying to have a little bit of self-awareness and a little bit of reflection as well, because you can just go through, if you're not the most natural reflective person or you're not a deep thinker, it can be quite difficult for people to sit and go, where am I and where do I want to go. But I think basic things like maybe goal setting, or looking at maybe the season if you're an athlete and going, okay, well, what did I do really well this season? What times did I struggle? At what times did I do really well? What was going on in my environment around those times? So trying to have a little bit more awareness of yourself as a person is the first probably step, I would say.
Makes sense. And good advice. From a perspective of, we've talked about working with positive athletes who are obviously seeking more by obviously going to yourself at Unit 3 or someone else at Unit 3. That's a lot of input. They're going and seeking extra. And then obviously working with teams. These are all like real high performing athletes, good athletes that want the most, for most part anyway. On the flip side of that, what is a type of athlete or footballer specifically, let's say if you want to get into that, that you don't particularly like working with?
That's a good question. I think every athlete makes you a better coach. So I think that you have to be able to adapt as a coach, and you have to, again, figure out what makes people tick, what makes them happy, what makes them engaged, what's the best way to communicate with them. And I think I love coaching different athletes for that reason. And even in completely external to athletes, we have in Unit 3 just community-based classes, and we have a lady in who has a hearing impairment. So she's made us an incredible coach, because, and all of us in Unit 3, because we've learned little bits of sign language. We've had to, when we're going 3, 2, 1, go, we always have to be standing in front of her, like, and so I think anyone who comes in who is maybe a little bit different or has a different environment that they're coming from, different background, different struggles, it's always a great opportunity for the coach to adapt. However, I think we have a phrase in Unit 3, and it's be a sponge, not a rock. So sponges absorb information. They like being in learning environments. They like, or not even like, but they're willing to be uncomfortable. They're willing to ask questions. They're willing to support their teammates. They're willing to be reflective. Whereas rocks don't. Rocks are just a rock, and they're not open to anything, and maybe a little bit selfish, or I think rocks are hard to deal with, because especially when you're in a team environment where you have to have everyone rowing in the same direction, and if you have one person that's rowing in the other direction, they're just slowing everyone down. So I think I can be very empathetic. I can be extremely caring and considerate and compassionate, but if you're not willing to meet me halfway, it's going to be difficult, especially in a team environment, because there's no one individual in a team that's more important than another, whether that's players or staff members, and everyone goes through their own journey, and everyone has difficult times, and we'll gather around and we'll support everyone in that sense. But the bigger picture is the team, and the team has to come first. So it is challenging when you have potential players or athletes from any sports that are not willing to learn. I think that's probably something that I struggle with.
Probably the key thing, being coachable. That's all you say to everyone, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just be coachable.
Yeah.
We're literally speaking about it with Brendan Clark. He was saying he's got a younger kid who works with us. He's actually very coachable, by the way. We wouldn't just say that to him, but he's very coachable. Always asks great questions. He's so attentive. But he was saying the only thing he'd say to his kid is just be coachable. That's it. He's a hard thing to define, though.
It is, and it's not like one definition.
No.
I think how people are coachable is different. I think you have to be so reflective as a coach and so aware that you're talking to a group of 20 people, but you need to deliver the message in 20 different ways sometimes. So just being open, just being willing. That's all I would ask for.
Good word. Be willing.
Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. Do you have anything else?
Oh,
chilling?
Really, really good.
Yeah.
I'm just chilling out now. That's really, really good. Yeah.
Thought we were on a podcast.
It's great having people like yourself on. Obviously, we've got a very good relationship that has lasted a long time, which is super, and it's only going to grow as well. And we haven't seen each other in ages, so this was nice to catch up. But obviously, your coaching kind of speaks for itself. That it's so innovative it is a good word, but it's just, again, being willing yourself. You want this out of your athletes. You got to be the same yourself, trying new things, and you're almost looking just for, like, give me a little bit of cooperation, let me try these things. You will benefit from it if it works, and if it doesn't, we both learn from it, and everyone just moves on. I just think it's a breath of fresh air, because especially in football, like I said earlier, players, coaches, staff, it can be very robotic. It's very kind of same thing, and there's a time and a place for, don't get me wrong, we're massive on it, do the basics and do them really, really well. But do that as your foundation, but don't be afraid to go outside it if it's going to be for the benefit for the individual or the team, depending on the scenario. So it's a breath of fresh air. And obviously from your personal point of view, regardless of your coaching and stuff, it's always good to be around. You always feel positive, especially when we go into Unit 3. Like when we go into Unit 3, it's just like
great fun.
Just the energy in the place, and you can feel it. Obviously high performing athletes in there, but then also just the community feel, and it's great. It's similar to what we're trying to do ourselves, and
yeah, absolutely.
It goes both ways. And again, why we got on so well, and why the Unit 3 kind of thing came about with us and with Training 1-to-1 and Unit 3. It was like when the initial meeting we had met, and obviously Gary was there, and then met the other Gary who's at home at the moment. But that connected feel, and it was like, right, there's something here. But that's almost like when you describe environment, that's like the intangible stuff that you can't touch it, you always can't describe it, but it's just like this connective feel, and we feel the exact same thing when we go to Unit 3. And again, that just comes from good people, yourself, Niall, everyone that's there in Unit 3. So when you talk about environments, it's like it's the people that create it, and they're always open to learning. And again, some of the stuff, if for anyone who doesn't follow you can plug yourself if you want on socials, but some of the things you put on socials as well are so good. You don't post too often, but when you do, it's like it's good. Especially your insights from books, your key points from stories and books. I remember looking at them.
I've gotten a couple of books off.
And look at them going, geez, that's cool. Like, but it could be one thing I read in a day, but that's influence, like in a very positive way. So it was great having you on.
Thank you very much.
Do you
Really enjoyed that. And pardon?
Do you want to plug yourself?
Plug myself, Orlaith White Coaching and Unit 3 Health and Fitness.
Nice.
Please and thank you.
Fantastic.
Before we finish, Training 1-to-1 is incredible. And I want to talk about this throughout the podcast, but I didn't actually play football until I was probably 16 or 17, and the coaching that I got from you guys and the openness to the mad questions was really appreciated. And even from a pure technical and tactical point of view, the likes of body shape and scanning, like that's not something I'd ever experienced before I had coaching in. So you definitely got me to a certain level that I wouldn't have got to either even playing, and it's something that I really wanted to do for a year or two. So a big thank you to you for that, because I learned so much in that period, and I think it really transferred into me playing, and then just picking up on how you guys coach has been a real learning experience for me as well, and has helped me grow as a coach too. So I appreciate you and Gary, even if he is at home.
Thank you very much. It's beautiful. We appreciate it. The feeling is mutual.
100%.
Right? So thank you very much for your time. Hope everyone enjoyed. A lot of good insights in there. Don't know what that is, but good luck. Have a lovely day.
I'm not doing
See you later.
Yup.